What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Standing Guillotine podcast. Today, we are going to be talking UFC 287. That was Adesanya Pereira 2. Big night for us. It was Ryan's 30th birthday, so we had quite a bit of fun, but that means we did not watch as many of the fights as we probably could have. So we're going to focus on the fights that really caught our attention, because if a fight can take us away from our beers, then you know it had to be a good one. So the first one that really made me pay attention was the one that we called out. So we highlighted 3 fights last week. Unfortunately, 2 of those fights got canceled.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of last minute shifting around on the card, and things got a little weird. And I think it's fair to say that this card is going to be defined just as much by that huge knockout as it was the fights that didn't happen.
Right.
Because there were a lot of good ones on there that unfortunately didn't make the cut. But speaking of good fights, that kind of ended in a weird way. The featherweight fight, the one that we did call out, that one we wanted to highlight, Shailan Wolverine, Nerdumbeek, I probably said that wrong, but I don't care, and Steve Garcia. So Garcia got the knockout, but from what I was saying, and by saying I mean screaming very loudly in the bar at the television, was that it was an eye poke. So Garcia, you notice he gets the left hand that was huge and did knock him down.
Yep.
But in the meantime, if you watched his right hand as it was coming in, he got 1, maybe even 2 fingers in the eye. And after the fight, he's on the ground covering his face. It wasn't really defensive posture. He had his hands flat. It wasn't like his fists were curled and in front of his face.
His eye.
He was literally covering the eye and was getting treated for the eye poke after the fact. So that one to me, unfortunately, seemed like a huge miss from the referees. But he had that huge knockdown in round 1.
Yeah, I thought Shailan looked good.
I thought he was going to finish it in round 1, to be honest with you. I yelled when he got that knockdown because that was huge. I honestly didn't think, it was weird seeing him fighting Garcia because I didn't realize the height differential.
Garcia looked huge.
Garcia's 6 foot. There was a 4-inch height difference and a 6-inch reach advantage. And
he did what he needed to do. He was into Steve Garcia.
Yeah, he got on the inside and landed flush.
And then Steve Garcia just was able to escape.
Yeah, he got out of round 1. Great defense on the ground. He was able to tie him up, avoid the ground and pound, avoid any real huge damage after the knockdown. So good job by him to escape the round.
Yeah, Nerdumbeek did everything that he had to, everything that we said that he was going to do. And the when we last talked, he did.
Yeah, he came out firing. I was excited for it. He looked really solid. And if we're going to look at a loss, right, this is going to go on his record as a loss. 50th fight's a loss. What a shame. Maybe when he hits 100 next year or some crazy shit like that, he'll get that win on the record. But with that, I don't think that's a bad loss, not when you hang your hat on, right? Not a great win for Garcia. Not a bad loss for Nerdumbeek, right? He takes the loss on the record. It's not like he had an immaculate record in the first place, but losing that way to what is very clearly an eye poke, what the doctors will say was an eye poke, what I'm sure Garcia will come out and say was an eye poke, right? Because, again, referee missed it. It happens. It was very, very quick, so it would have been really easy to miss. But it's funny because they showed it on the first replay angle, and that's when I really started screaming it out.
It was an eye poke.
Yeah.
It was an eye poke. I didn't really. I made the bet. I bet one.
So Ryan decided to bet against me because that way, either way, we won, right? So we win. He either won money or we won because the call on the pod was right.
Yeah.
So you can't lose in that situation. That's propping bets 101 right there. But with that, I was screaming that was an eye poke. And then on the replay, it was weird because they showed the angle where the finger went in the eye, and then they didn't show that angle again.
Well, why would you?
They showed it from the opposite side, right? Because they wanted to sell that knockout. Because no matter what you do, once the ref steps in and calls it a knockout, it's a knockout. You can't retroactively go back. You can challenge it, but how many times is the Athletic Commission really going to turn over?
Yeah, they're not going to turn it over
on a freaking prelim, right? Let's be honest. It's an early prelim at that.
I don't think that he Uncle Dana doesn't say he never fights again. I think he's going to get more fights.
Yeah, 100%. And he's got a strong record in the UFC. I think that was a great fight. Garcia's on the up and up.
He was coming off of 3. Nerdumbeek was coming off of 3. Wasn't he coming off 3 wins?
3 wins. So I think this is a guy who's going to get his chance. An early prelim fight, disappointing not to go our way.
Yeah, he was all over Garcia.
But 100% our call looked good up until the eye poke.
Right, I was nervous.
Yeah, that's why
I just didn't want to be on the wrong side of history.
didn't want to be on the wrong side of history. But hey, you hedged your bet. Yeah. You could have said, well, on the pod I said this, and for some reason you went with someone else's.
Well, my guy did.
Yeah, your guy didn't believe in this guy, and that makes me a little sad. But that's okay. Things happen. Moving on to our prelims. We had highlighted some fights for the prelims. Unfortunately, those fights didn't happen. We did have a couple of good ones. The huge, two huge fights that we saw out of the prelims was obviously the featured prelim, but even before that, it was the Joe Pfeiffer fight. That KO was nasty.
Yeah.
So coming in with bad intentions, definitely getting himself the win, putting his name kind of in that lower end of the middleweight division.
Yep.
But speaking of middleweight division, right? Chris Curtis, Kelvin Gastelum. Now, I wouldn't actually hate a situation where Joe Pfeiffer's next fight is Chris Curtis.
No, that would be, yeah.
Two guys who are going to duke it out on the feet.
Right.
I wouldn't hate that. Curtis is the number 15 guy. Or sorry, he was 14. Gastelum was 15. After Gastelum gets the win, I don't think Curtis had a bad showing.
No.
So I don't see him dropping out of top 15 contention, but I do see him needing to have one of those prove-it fights where to stay top 15. So fighting a guy who's kind of on the upswing in Pfeiffer, that gives us that opportunity where Curtis can either show you still got it in the tank, just like Gastelum did, or maybe it's kind of starting to fade away at the tail end of a career.
Right.
Didn't retire, so that's good news. So we know that there's probably still another fight in him. But what a great showing by Gastelum there in that fight. That was just two guys willing to stand on the feet, trade in the pocket, and just go for it. He did need it. I mean, if we look at his record, a lot of the people that he's lost to, they're not bad losses, right? If we look at the names on there, so he lost to Robert Whittaker, the number one contender. Outside of what was Adesanya. So I guess the next guy got number 2. It took him to a decision, right? In a 5-round fight. It was unanimous, but still, he didn't get beat. He lost by decision. Lost to Jack Hermanson. Again, not terrible. Guy high up in the division. The Darren Till one kind of hurts a little bit. Till obviously no longer being with the promotion. That was probably Darren Till's last solid fight back in 2019. Then we had losing to Adesanya.
It was a goat.
Right. Division. And then losing to Bisping. Or no, sorry, beating Bisping. My bad. He beat Bisping, beat Jacare Souza, and then lost to Adesanya. And that kind of started that downward trend for him, right? So lost to Adesanya, lost to Till, lost to Gastelum. Gastelum. Lost to Hermanson. And then a little bit, he's starting to fight his way back and then losing to Whittaker. That fight against Jarrett Cannonier that ended up being canceled could have been a huge one for him. But obviously, he's had a rough last couple of years in terms of the record. So getting back on track with
the
Curtis.
2-year layoff. Almost a little bit. Year and a half. Year and a half
layoff. Or, almost exactly 2 years. No,
August 20. Well, yeah.
Yeah, because that fight never happened. So, April 17th, 2021.
No,
so, we're 2 years, basically. 2 years in a week. And able to get back on track with a win, giving him another chance to maybe make a run up, throw his name in the ring. Because the middleweight division is actually kind of a mess. If we look at the middleweight division, there's a lot of guys who have beaten each other, and Adesanya has cleaned house.
He owns that division.
Right, so what do you really do in terms of setup? And we'll hint at that later once we talk what's next as we work our way through this main card here. But for middleweight, having Gastelum back into that conversation could be good for shaking things up and figuring out where guys really stand. So having another solid fighter you can lean on as kind of, if not a contender, a gatekeeper is super helpful.
Yeah, and as we said before, it's always better to have, having more people is a problem than having less.
Yeah, right. You'd rather have too much of a good thing than not enough,
right?
Especially when it comes to having these fights every single week,
right?
Or almost every week. So having that frequency of fights increased, having the better fighters available, all of those things I think are. And a name, because honestly, people know his name. So that's a marketable name. You can put that on a fight. You could make that a fight night around him now that he's kind of back in that conversation. I don't think that happens immediately, but I do see that as a possibility down the road, especially because that was a war that he went through. That was a 3-round war. Those two guys stood and threw. Curtis had some unorthodox punches, but they seemed to be pretty effective. Like really loopy punches and then hitting with the back of his hand a lot on the missing the jab but then swinging it back. Didn't
he try to throw a spinning bat fist at one point?
Yeah, I think it was a little messy. They were definitely feeling it in round 3. One of the judges actually even gave Curtis round 3, so it was a unanimous in favor of Gastelum, but Curtis did win round 3 or do just enough in round 3. It was definitely competitive all the way out. It wasn't like they were both gassed and were just kind of hanging on each other. It was they were throwing and still both guys have enough power in their hands that you never know. One of those things could just knock you out.
Right.
But on to our main card. This first fight, Raul Rosas Jr., this was one that we had hyped up. This is the 18-year-old kid who's coming in. The new wave of UFC fighter. We really hyped up all that conversation with a guy who's trained the whole time, and honestly, he kind of looked, and I hate to say it, but he kind of looked like a one-trick pony.
Yeah, well, he looked 18.
Yeah, definitely, and the inexperience didn't help.
And he came out and tweeted about it, too. He was like, I could have finished it, and then I kind of saw where my lapses are. I think what's good about that is get the loss out of the way, so he doesn't have, now the monkey's off your back, right? You don't have to worry about being this undefeated guy. You can kind of go in and just fight your game. I don't think the hype train's not stopped. It's not the hype train isn't parked in the station yet, but I think that if you're a cash, then you might get off Rose's jockstrap, but I still think there's a bright future for him. I
mean, look at how dominant round 1 was, right? I think there were a few things he could have cleaned up, and this was something that Rodriguez kind of put a clinic in on doing correctly.
Yeah.
So he was working for finishes, but he wasn't throwing punches to soften Rodriguez up.
Right.
And I think that was a huge difference when Rodriguez sat Rosas down. He was able to soften him up with, okay, I can't get this finish. I can't work my arm in under the chin. Let me throw a couple punches to the body. Let me just try and bring his hand down and give me that chance to slip that arm in. And that's something I think would have helped Rosas finish.
I think it was honestly, for that fight, it was just inexperience. I don't know how many fights Christian Rodriguez has under his belt.
Well, let's take a look. So he has now, that was his 10th fight.
Oh, yeah. And that was only his 3rd, I think, Rosas.
Technically his 8th, but if we're talking actual in the ring, in the UFC octagon, that was only his second. His second with a promotion. Now, Rodriguez, weirdly enough, also a prospect, right? But like we talked about, huge age difference. That was his 3rd fight in the promotion. But again, it does really show out that this is a guy who's been training longer. Even if we're not talking, right? You're talking 18 versus somebody who's, I think it was 24, something in that range, right? So yeah, it's 24 doesn't sound old, but compared to 18, he's ancient. But he's had 6 more years of training, right? And the way that you look at that is that training's effective,
right?
Even if he's not got the natural gifts, maybe that Rosas might possess, he's got the experience. And he definitely looked calm.
Yeah.
Right. At no point did he seem under duress. Rosas was working hard, but Rodriguez kept his cool, escaped the round, and then went to work after Rosas was gassed.
Yeah, I think then the gas tank on Rosas kind of went out.
Yeah, which is shocking because, being that young, being that fit.
Well, I think he tried so hard to get the finish in the first round, and then even in the second, I think he just ran out of gas. And then Rodriguez was able to kind of survive, and then once the steam rolled off, then he was like, okay, I can take control. Because what was the scorecard?
So the scorecard had Rosas winning round 1 pretty handily, and then Rodriguez winning, so it was 29, 27, 28, 29.
Okay, go to it.
Yeah, hold on. Let's see. That was, 29, 28, 29, 27, 29, 28. So one judge had round 3 as a 10-8 round.
Wow.
Just because realistically, Rosas by round 3 wasn't doing anything.
No, yeah, he was done.
Yeah, there were a couple of, he tried like some spinning stuff in round 2, and that's like, once a guy goes that deep in his bag, that's almost desperation.
Yeah, once you're grabbing the unorthodox, once you're going unorthodox, now you're just trying to spark something in yourself.
Yeah, do whatever you can to just, maybe one of these shots lands, maybe I get lucky here. But it didn't look like he had much discipline on the feet. And I mean, part of that's probably gas tank. Yeah. But for what we build as this guy's trained MMA, right? A big portion of MMA is striking. Mm-hmm. Like, yes, grapplers have their place, and grapplers have been dominant at times. But how many strikers, striking will always be a part of it.
Yeah.
It's
a mixed martial art.
Right. Like, think of how many times we say, like, this person has a puncher's chance, right? If you're a striker, you're never really out of the fight.
Right.
Where, say you lost the first 2 rounds because the grappler just held you down.
Yep.
Round 3, if you land just that one punch, so if you don't have that in your bag, I mean, at 18, that makes sense, right? There's still a lot of time, but that's something that if I'm him, I'm training. If I'm training with him, it's, mix in some punches on the ground, try and get some damage there, soften them up before working, because he did some pretty extensive work to try and get those things and gassed himself when he could have given himself easier opportunities. Right. Maybe pacing, right? So
bring it back up to the feet,
right, and just give himself that opportunity to not gas.
From what I remember, which I don't remember that much.
I wonder why.
Tears and swords were
they were flowing.
But I didn't think that he was down and out.
So it was round 2 got pretty ugly. Round 3, I'm actually, if I were to give a 10-8, I would have given it in round 2 because he wasn't throwing really anything. But round 3, coming out, Rodriguez looked like he had fresh legs. Yeah. And so for Rosas, he just kind of looked like he knew his game plan wasn't working. And he looked kind of stymied, he didn't know what to do. He was like, I'm sitting here and I can't think of a way out of this. And maybe that's part and part making sure he's got a solid corner in his bag. Maybe that's partially didn't do enough training, maybe didn't take it as he could, because I did see an interesting tweet. So from Aljamain Sterling, I don't know if you saw this tree, but Aljamain Sterling was saying that he trained with Rosas again, but this time without the cameras. Mm-hmm. So Rosas was training with Aljo, and Aljo, that's a great guy to train with, right, for especially somebody who's
that young,
predominantly grappling, right, too. So a champ, somebody with that experience, 30 years-ish, right? He's somewhere in that 30s range. But this is a guy who's been training a lot longer than you. This is a guy who is a world champion. That's what you want to achieve. And Rosas wanted to train with him, but it seemed like, at least from Aljo's perspective, it was a publicity stunt rather than actual. And when you're that young, some of that arrogance might creep in. But that's one of the things that has me kind of if you've got champions calling out your work ethic, then that's something where it's okay, good that he has the loss, right? And that's. And
did he say that he wasn't working as hard?
Well, he was saying that he'll train with him again, but without the cameras. So I think to me that implies that Rosas was just trying to cut a promo, not
he wasn't there to train. He was to get his picture taken.
Right, and you can kind of get lost in that, right? And that stardom.
This kid, you got to imagine that's one of the downfalls we say about athletes across the board, mm-hmm, especially with football players. You see with some hockey players. Especially basketball as well.
Yeah. Right?
Your whole life you're told you're just great.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Then you're great, you're the best. And then, you have, I'm not saying that he doesn't have heart, but, right, the intangible is going to be that if you think that you're the best, it gets in your head. It gets in, I think that definitely happened to him. Him thinking that he was the best, that there's nothing that he can do wrong.
Right.
Right. So then when you get into a pissing match, someone who has a tougher stream might overpower you and just overcome it. Then maybe that doubt will creep in. Maybe oh shit.
Yeah.
I hope that doesn't happen to him. Because I think he has a lot of potential in the UFC. But I don't I think his next fight's going to be huge. Right. What happens, mm-hmm, next? Does he go back or does he change? His camp, does he change some of the stuff? Maybe he kind of realizes, okay, this is legit now. I'm not that's what we kind of looking for, he just really hasn't faced adversity, and that was this is a big adversity. It's not about how can you get back up and
it's not. It's more what defines a champion is what happens when you get knocked down. Look at Leon Edwards, right?
Yeah.
That early loss to Kamaru Usman in his career,
right?
And that being a really huge defining moment where he's out of the promotion.
Yep.
The work and effort that he put in to not only get back into the promotion, but to so much later be fighting him for the belt, winning the belt, and then keeping the belt.
Right.
That right there to me is that is quintessential heart of a champion. It's not about how you get knocked down. It's about how you get back up. And that 100% I think is the focus. And with somebody so young, this is a concern because we've seen this with other young UFC prospects. Remember Hooper, right? Hooper, his career is kind of circling the drain. And remember that this kid was hyped coming out of the Dana White Contender Series. He was, the dream, right? Again, all this talk of, I remember reading ESPN articles about the difference of all this group of prospects coming up. It hasn't really passed the first test. We're still seeing these older guys, and some of that might just be that 18 is too young.
Yeah.
Right? 18 is young to be fighting a grown-ass man who's been training a lot longer than you and is just a lot more, maybe even mentally confident than you.
This is why they don't allow kids to go play football right away.
Yeah.
Because they're going against grown men.
Right. You need a little bit of time to toughen up. 18, if I think about me at 18, right? So me at 18 versus me at 20. Almost completely different people. And that was just a couple years of college sports under my belt. So when I came into college at 18, I was 5'6" and 130 pounds. By the end of my freshman year, I was still 5'6" because I didn't grow until randomly 3 inches my junior year.
Right.
But I grew those 3 inches, but I put
still
on...
definitely grow. 21 years old is typically when,
Yeah, that's when... So, for all we know, he could have this massive, body recomp, right? I put on 50 pounds my freshman year. We joked about the freshman 15. My parents did before I went. They're like, oh, you're finally going to gain some weight. We won't be able to, count your ribs. And I came home... after putting on 20 pounds of pretty much muscle from 2 days lifting because my coach was like, I can't play you. I can't put you on the ice if you're 130 pounds.
Right.
And so I put on 20 pounds of muscle.
And not be Johnny Gaudreau.
Yeah, no, I'd just die. I would just straight up die. I'd get hit. I wouldn't see it coming, and I would be just literally stretchered off the ice. Even still, that is how my career ended. It was a cross-check to the throat. So... and landing headfirst on the ice right in front of my wife. First game she ever watched, fun fact. And so when it came time to think about sports for my son, she's like, not hockey. And I was like, all right.
Yeah, hockey, yeah.
But when I think about it, that was, so 18 to 20. There's a lot still in the tank for this kid. The muscle's going to get denser. The muscle fibers are going to get denser. His shoulders are going to get broader. He could even grow 2, 3, 4 inches. We don't know where this will go, but the hope is, of course, that getting that loss early, that it doesn't ruin a prospect, that it gives him that opportunity.
It seems like that's how he's reacting to it, from what I've seen.
Yeah, and that's good, right? It's all going to come down to this camp and this next fight. So definitely still, in our minds, one to watch for.
Yeah.
Next time he comes up, we'll definitely be talking about it. We'll be highlighting that fight as one to watch for that night. But speaking of some great fights, right? Speaking of guys making a comeback, guys who were kind of have been knocked down and had a rough time of it and coming back, Kevin Holland. If we look at Kevin Holland, his most recent fights have not really gone great for him. So he knocked out Ponzinibbio in very convincing fashion. We tweeted out at the official page, which is, again, at TSG Podcast, or MMA Podcast. So at TSG MMA Podcast, I retweeted a picture where Ponzinibbio is literally face down
and then trying
on
to say
the
that
mat.
He's not knocked out.
Right, and then he, the mat woke him up, and he came up shaking his finger no. Nah, dude, you got pieced up. So the last one was against Wonder Boy. He lost that one because he broke his hand. It was a corner stoppage after the 4th round, broke his hand. But that's also an incredible point. Like, broke his hand, came back. He broke his hand in December, came back in April, and knocked a guy out with a hand he broke.
Yeah.
That's incredible. And then having to fight Khamzat Chimaev, he stepped in on that fight, doing Dana a big favor.
Which I think that's why he got the fight. That's why That's why they've kept him in. I think that helps a lot by stepping in there. Mm-hmm. Especially, like, not trying to sound like an asshole, but I don't think Kevin Holland had any...
He had no business being in the ring with Chimaev.
Not many people do.
No, and I mean, let's be honest, that's just a bad stylistic matchup for him.
Yeah.
He's a guy who wants to... He's got that karate fighting style, hands down.
Yep.
Wants to strike from the waist and quick strikes and throw these devastating knockouts, and Chimaev's like, we're not going to do that.
Yeah. And I'll wrestle you.
Yeah, so it literally, that was a round 1 submission, and Holland maybe threw 1 kick before he was...
I don't think he landed a punch.
I don't think he landed a significant strike.
Yeah.
Or if he did, it was from the ground, from his back. That was not his fight, let me put it that way. But with that fight overall... doing good by the promotion, and the promotion's done good by him. And he, before the Chimaev fight, was 2-0 in the UFC, then took 2 losses, so he would have been 2-2. But then this fight gets him kind of right back on track, and against somebody, Ponzinibbio, who is a good fighter in his own right, big knockout guy, 30 wins, 16 wins by knockout.
Yeah. It's over half.
This is a guy that is a good stylistic matchup.
Yep.
And I think with Holland, who's an entertaining fighter, I don't think he's championship material, because I do think having 0 ground game is just not going to work in that division.
Right.
But being able to, and willing to throw down, I think it's good.
It's honestly too bad that Masvidal retired, because I think that would have been the next fight.
That would have been great. Now, he did call out Masvidal at the end of the fight. I don't know if you saw that.
Because him and Masvidal got into a little tiff.
Yep. They had a fight outside at the
in the
hotel.
Outside,
right?
They got brought back into the hotel.
Yeah. But I think, that honestly, someone who's willing to throw hands with them, I think he's a great fighter. I think he's a very entertaining fighter. I think he's always one to watch. But again, he's a very matchup-specific fighter, and that's got to be something that's working in his favor, or it's going to be ugly like the Chimaev fight. Now, that I don't think he's going to get forced to take one of those scenarios again, but good on him for at least being game.
And he went up in weight to fight Chimaev, didn't he?
Yeah, he did. So that was just one of those things where it was like, and I think Chimaev, didn't he miss weight like crazy too? Yeah. So that was one where he legitimately was getting mauled by a guy 30 freaking pounds heavier.
Because he was supposed to fight Kevin Holland. He was supposed to fight.
I don't remember what that was. It was so long ago.
No, he was supposed to fight the Chinese fighter.
Yi Qianlang.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think. Yeah. And then having to come in and fight Chimaev at a.
He's a bad. Look at him. He just looks like
that's a scary man right there.
He looks like a.
He's a man possessed.
Middle Eastern Abraham Lincoln.
I'd love the Abe Lincoln beard. It's my favorite. But yeah, I think he was supposed to fight Jin Liang, and then it just didn't work out for him. But yeah, his last, Chimaev's got a long time without a fight. The last fight was with Holland, and Holland's had 2 fights since.
Yeah.
That's pretty crazy when you think about it. Good on Holland for staying active. But everyone's a fucking coward and won't fight Chimaev. And so even more credit for him stepping in there.
Yeah, who do you think the next fight for Chimaev is?
Honestly, so this was one that I tweeted out and one that I saw. I see him potentially as a match for Adesanya. And the reason why, hear me out, is he would be going up. So he would be moving up to middleweight. If he's having trouble making the cut to welter, and that's the reason why he's not getting a fight, or it's like he said, the doctor stopped him.
Yeah, he says he can get down. But
if a doctor doesn't stop him.
Right.
But I mean, that's like saying, dude, I could absolutely nail a backflip if my neck wouldn't break when I missed the first 5 times.
Right.
Okay, that's sick at all. That's a cool hypothetical. Mm-hmm. But if you can't in practice make the weight cut, why not move up? Because no one in that division wants to fight him. Right. No one.
Well, he's a beast.
If Covington's getting the title shot, which a lot of people think that he is, Dana wants to reward him, whatever.
No, Dana White said, He is. That's like set in stone.
But that
Which
to me
is funny
silly.
because what's his face won't fight him.
Right, Leon Edwards has no interest in that fight. And I don't blame him because I don't think that Covington realistically has done enough to earn that. Making a weight cut.
But who's the fight?
Chimaev should be the fight. 100% should be the fight. But everyone's been dodging him. Realistically, the fight should have already happened between Covington and Chimaev, and then that should have been who fights Edwards.
Yeah.
Whoever won that one.
Covington Wolf is.
But Covington will not. Well, I mean, I will say no, he has not. Covington will not. I think the Masvidal attacking Covington thing actually did cause a pretty big. Do you remember that? Like Masvidal attacked.
Oh yeah, because Masvidal can't. Yeah, because
Covington couldn't because of concussion protocol. So like. We can say Covington dodging fights, yeah. But he let's call it what it is. He did get attacked.
Yep.
That did cause an issue in the division.
Mm-hmm. What's his face wants that fight too. Burns.
Gilbert Burns.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's definitely
They
arguments.
were pissed off at the press conference. Both of them booed Dana.
Yeah. I mean, it is at this point. It's that the divisions are really a huge mess right now, and the problem is that we have too many fights going on.
Yeah,
and like as much as an entertainment product is great, it really does make that making those matches really hard because when you have a division like welterweight where everyone's beat everyone, you have
good fighters not fighting.
Right, so you got guys sitting, right? Middleweight, everyone, or welterweight, everyone's beat everyone. Middleweight, everyone's beat everyone. Even bantamweight, everybody's beat everyone. And it's just this really bad spot for everything to be in terms of making a fight.
Either should or get off the pot.
Yeah, but it's tough when guys will say no to a fight, and that's kind of allowed.
I feel like you should say no. I think that's bad for business.
I definitely think so. Like in terms for the UFC, it's definitely bad for them. I think that for fighters, though, a lot of this is like they're trying to do what's best and maximize their careers. Because again, we talk about that money.
But eventually, you're gonna have to fight them anyway.
Theoretically, but if you can avoid them, or if you force Chimaev to go up to another weight class, then you can avoid them altogether. I think maybe that's the hope there. But on to bantamweight, another thing so this is another logjam at bantamweight, right? But this was Adrian Yanez looking to move up from number 12, fighting Rob Font, who's number 6. Font has struggled against the people above him in the division. He's lost to, I think, Moreno and Sandhagen. Mm-hmm. So he's definitely kind of he's not in that top tier in the division. He's a step below. I think for him, getting this win, and in convincing fashion, first round knockout, right? So that was a big power knockout from Rob Font. I think that for him, that solidifies that he's kind of firmly that gatekeeper into that top 5 slot. And I do think that he deserves another fight within the top 5. I could
get pieced up.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think he'll do great, but I could see either Chito Vera again, or I could see who didn't look great in his last fight.
I think that's who he fights.
I think that could be a good one, or fighting Yan.
Peter Yan.
Yeah.
Well, someone else already called up. Chito called out Peter Yan.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see what happens. Like, I think he deserves a top 5 fight. I don't think he's got to gatekeep again after that convincing of a performance. So I'd be curious to see what happens. But again, bantamweight is a mess.
Backed up, yeah.
Yeah, everything. There's so many fights that need to happen.
Very interesting to see what happens May 6th.
Yeah.
Cejudo's such a bitch, dude.
I mean, he's got the prestige, right? And yeah, it's a little frustrating that he's able to just walk in and jump over O'Malley or Dvalishvili, right? Like guys who have a legitimate case, and that he's able to jump in.
How is Peter Yan on number 4?
Well, I mean, he was 2, and then Marab.
So I think, if you're up far, I think you have to maybe Peter Yan.
Yeah, I mean, realistically, looking at this, Rob Font, if he wants a top 5 fight, the names are Vera, Yan, Sandhagen, O'Malley, Dvalishvili. He's not getting O'Malley, Dvalishvili, that's for certain. Right. Doesn't make sense for Sandhagen to fight down.
O'Malley's fighting the winner of Cejudo and Sterling.
Right. So that leaves Dvalishvili, who's not going to fight down, because I think he gets whoever, he's definitely getting an opportunity.
He's the winner of the winner.
Yeah.
I can see him fighting Corey Sandhagen.
But does that make sense for Sandhagen to fight down?
No, I'm talking about Walsh, Wheatley, and Sandhagen.
Yeah, that actually wouldn't be a terrible one if they want to stay active. But I think that leaves. So now we're talking Jan Vera.
And I don't think that would change Sandhagen's status.
That's for sure. I mean, all this gets confusing once you throw in Cejudo, right? Because he's not in these rankings.
Right.
If he wins, then Aljo becomes 1 instead of champion, unless Aljo changes divisions. So, like, again, there's a whole big mess here that needs to be solved by the Cejudo-Aljo nonsense.
Yeah.
If Cejudo loses, he may retire, and it doesn't mess up your rankings at all.
Right.
But a big name to consider, too, that's in that division is, again, we've talked about it, we've hinted at it before, Dominic Cruz, maybe not the biggest fighter anymore, but a solid name to put on there. So I could see Rob Font, Dominic Cruz going at it.
Yeah.
That, I think, could be a decent fight for him.
Didn't someone call out Makhachev?
I'm not sure.
Well, I know there's been talks about Makhachev moving up, too.
Yeah, I mean, I think any of those Dagestani guys realistically could move up 1 to 2 divisions without much issue because their weight cuts are so insane. But I think
it was Kamaru Usman fighting Makhachev. I think that's why I saw that.
I mean, I've also seen Kamaru Usman moving up. Well, if Makhachev moved up, then I could see him fighting Usman. But I
don't think that anyone's going to beat Makhachev in that.
I mean, I think Gaethje deserves another chance, though. We talked about this after Gaethje's fight. I think that that's another chance for him. I think he deserves that. If I'm Kamaru Usman, though, one thing that I saw, which was really interesting, was there were people linking Usman and Adesanya.
Yeah,
I wouldn't actually hate that. Kamaru moving up 1. The two of them are like kind of buddy-buddy, but I could see that being a good fight. Because realistically, if we look at middleweight, who is Adesanya going to fight? He's got wins over Whitaker. He's got the win over Pereira.
Whitaker's the guy, I think.
Whitaker would have to be the next guy up, but Adesanya's beaten Whitaker convincingly.
Right. There's really no one for him to fight.
Marvin Vettori, he's beaten. Jared Cannonier, he's beaten. Paulo Costa would be the next name down there. He did call out Duplessis, but
Duplessis called him out and was like, I'm real African.
Yeah, that was actually pretty funny.
Yeah.
Just the South African guy being like, I've got all of Africa at my back, bro. Let's go.
He called him. He was like, yeah, have fun in New Zealand.
Yeah, right. This is bringing the title back to New Zealand.
Yeah.
Dricus Duplessis, I think, maybe. But honestly, I would rather see Duplessis fight Robert Whitaker. Or I wouldn't hate seeing Pereira fight Robert Whitaker.
But are they going to do Pereira on Adesanya 3?
I can't. I don't think you run it back immediately. I really don't. It's too tough. I think the more likely there are 3 scenarios that I've seen tossed out there, all of which I think are fascinating scenarios. Mm-hmm. So the first would be Kamaru Usman.
Right.
The second would be Hamza Chimaev, also called out Adesanya. So I honestly would be interested in seeing that.
That would be a great fight.
That would be a great fight because it's like this is Adesanya is very slippery.
Yeah.
He's fought grapplers before. I'm not going to say that Robert Whitaker is on the grappling, like the same grappling level as Chimaev, but he has shown an ability to be elusive. Mm-hmm. And he is very difficult to keep down.
I don't know. If I'm that would be a great fight. Chimaev, that would be crazy.
That would be a great fight. So you got Usman, Chimaev, and I'm going to throw out another name here.
Even Chimaev against Pereira would be nuts.
And it's one that I don't think people are paying much attention to. But, I always get these two mixed up. Give me 1 second. Jan Blachowicz. So Jan Blachowicz called out Adesanya as well. I almost said Yuri Prochazka because I always get the two of them mixed up. I know they're very different, but so Jan Blachowicz, the number 3 guy in light heavyweight, has called out Adesanya, and I think what would be interesting is that so they've fought previously, and Blachowicz won against Adesanya.
When?
Back in 2021 when Adesanya went up. So it wasn't a title fight.
Yeah.
But Blachowicz is saying he wants to come down from light heavyweight to fight Adesanya. And that's a fight that one went to decision. I wouldn't hate that as a run back either. Adesanya Blachowicz 2 would be sick. And then we had the split decision draw against Ankalaev. Do you remember that? That was for the belt.
Yep.
and like nothing got determined there. That was crazy. So Blachowicz, I think he does have, like, I honestly wouldn't hate Blachowicz staying in light heavyweight because I think he's got another opportunity. But I think with Jamal Hill there, Yuri Prohaska after the injury has to get the next fight.
Yep.
So he doesn't have a title shot at light heavyweight lined up yet. I think he could, but honestly, having that history of giving Adesanya his loss, if we're continuing that idea of Adesanya exercising his demons, right, like he did with Pereira, I think that would be another great fight. So that one's a little bit out there. But again, all these situations involve people changing and jumping divisions because there is such a jam, an absolute log jam in so many divisions.
That'll be a tough weight cut.
I mean, if he says he can do it, I believe him. I mean, but it's 185 and 205.
Yeah.
So that's a 20-pound weight cut.
From what? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So 205 is light heavyweight. Middleweight.
What
does
he walk around at? Does he walk around like 215? Like, can he cut 35 pounds?
I mean, he's a pretty lean looking dude. You know who he reminds me a ton of?
Who?
Stipe. Just like looking at him, like he kind of looks like Stipe. Just something about the aesthetic. Which, imagine Stipe comes running out, cutting all the way from heavyweight. Dude's just gotten real skinny.
Doesn't he want to fight Jones?
Yeah, I don't think Stipe fights again. I'm gonna be honest with you. I think that's a name that they like having, but I don't think he fights again.
Yeah.
If I were to take a really, but I think whoever, like Pavlovich Blades, that fight night's going to be absolutely sick when that comes up. Yeah. That's going to determine who's fighting Jones. I don't love either of those guys' chance against John Jones, but I don't think we're going to see Stipe. But back to this card, before we get way too ahead of ourselves, talking the next like year of fights out in advance. Rob Font, solid win over Adrian Yanez. I think that does even make that top of the division even murkier, right?
Interesting.
If somehow we could make that division more difficult, that's the way.
Well, again, a good problem to have.
Yeah, right.
It gets us something to talk about.
It's got a wealth of riches in these divisions right now. Moving on to the next fight, welterweight. This was Gilbert Burns, Jorge Masvidal. I had tweeted out that I thought we were going to see Masvidal give it up just because he came in with a weird energy. I didn't like all the stuff I was hearing out of him leading up to the fight. And, like, visually, people were, like, kind of mocking the little bit of a gut, if you can call it that.
Yeah.
For a guy who's historically fought with 6 clearly defined abdominals, it was weird to see even, like, an ounce of fat on Jorge Masvidal. Yeah. And so I think that was, like, a lot of people mocking that, whatever. But I, like, seeing that coming out in that condition.
Did he have, like, an injury, I wonder?
Or I wonder if it's just a bad camp.
Yeah.
Like, whatever was going on. But, like, if you're going into a fight and you're talking about retiring, if you lose, you're already kind of projecting that he's already making plans for losing. That's not a spot you want to fight.
Well, it's that built-in excuse.
Yeah.
Oh, it was done.
I mean, he was 38.
Yeah.
Like, and so Gilbert Burns won in fairly convincing fashion.
It was an interesting take that Gilbert Burns had. Gilbert Burns said something along the lines of that Masvidal was extra slippery. Mm-hmm. And he, like, accused him of, like, lathering up in lotion. And I guess what he was saying...
It was the Miami humidity, I'm telling you.
What he was saying was, like, what fighters will do, I guess, is, like, they'll just apply lotion to their bodies. And then once and it will lock into your skin. Mm-hmm. And then once like, your skin is activated...
Once you start to sweat.
It will sweat out the lotion, and you'll get, like, extra slippery. So that's why he said he couldn't get a finish, because...
He couldn't keep a hold on him?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he did have 4 takedowns. He landed 4 of his 6 takedown attempts. If we go round by round, Masvidal did outstrike him in round 1, but the significant strikes were fairly even, and then Burns landed the big takedown and had control time. So I think that won him round 1 in my mind. Round 2, 2 takedowns for Burns, even closer on the strikes, the significant strikes in Gilbert Burns' favor. And then round 3, more takedown, more strikes.
Yeah, Masvidal didn't do what he said he was going to do. Masvidal said that he was going to put him out like he did with a knee.
Oh, that he's going to put him out like Askren, like he's going to shoot for a shot and he's going to put him out with a knee.
He called Gilbert Burns a crotch sniffer.
That's an interesting take.
He's another crotch sniffer, and he said either elbow to the temple or knee to the face.
Well, neither of those things happened, and Jorge got retired, so I don't want to hear it. That was actually pretty sad. Like, I think Holland and Masvidal would have been a great fight. But let's like kind of highlight a few of the things going on. So we talked about the conflict between him and Covington. That legal battle is actually starting to ramp up right now.
Yeah.
So like there's a lot going on in Masvidal's life. So if we're talking about the things that could have gone wrong in his camp, that's one of them, right? You're having to deal with all this.
That's a felony.
Right.
He's facing a felony.
He is literally facing a felony for beating on a guy when he had an opportunity to beat his ass in the ring and he didn't.
Yep.
Right? So crazy to me that you had sanctioned violence against this man and you couldn't get it done there, so you decided to attack him later on. But for him, there's a lot going on in his life. He's also 38. He's been fighting for a long time. I don't really see another opportunity for him to make a run at that belt before he makes a run. He was a
Kimbo Slice guy.
Yeah, so like we're talking a very long time he's been around this fight game. Solid career, really kind of jump started that second wave in his late 30s with that thundering knee, right? Yeah. That knee was everything. It completely changed the trajectory of his career. A little bit different than like a guy like you talked about Cowboy Cerrone retiring and that being more of a monumental thing.
Yeah.
I don't think Jorge Masvidal is going to be one of those like...
Do you think he did enough to get in the Hall of Fame?
I think that knee that belongs in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
One fight, maybe. One finish, maybe. Him as a whole fighter, his collective body of work, I don't think so, realistically. But it was nice for him to get that ending of...
Who's he fought? Like,
he's in Miami. He's fought some big names. He hasn't beaten
anybody.
The big names. He
lost to Nate Diaz. No, he beat
Nate Diaz, but again, it's not prime Diaz.
Yeah.
So again, you can talk about, oh yeah, he beat Diaz, but what version of Diaz are we getting here? Lost to Covington, lost to Burns, lost to Usman with that thundering knockout.
Yeah. Twice.
One against Diaz, one against Askren. And this is one of the things I was talking about. So you talked about, like, I was big on Gilbert Burns. He beat the ghost of Darren Till. Lost to Wonder Boy. Lost to Maya.
He hasn't really done anything.
I'm literally telling you, he beat Cerrone back in 2017. He beat Ellenberger in 2016. But like, so when people talk about his power, right? So if we look at his stats, this was one of the things that I was deep into the 16 wins by knockout, right? That's the ticker tape that comes across, right? Knockout. If we look at who he has knocked out, so the Masvidal versus Diaz was a corner stoppage because of bleeding, which is a chronic Diaz problem, right? That's not anything Jorge did that was extremely special, right? That's a chronic Diaz problem.
Guy's paper skin.
Dude literally looks at a sharp edge and is immediately gushing blood. The Askren knockout, obviously huge.
Right.
That was a true knockout. But knocked out Darren Till.
Well, I mean, Masvidal won that fight before it even started.
Yeah. But I mean, like, okay, so we go back to...
And then who, like...
2019 since... Like, right. I mean, fantastic wrestler. And was a champion in his own promotion, but again, Masvidal turned one moment into a career, and then that career went south very quickly, right? Like if we look at this, he was 0 for his last 1, 2, 3, 4. Like that's not exactly how you want. That's not a Hall of Fame guy.
No. If he had beaten Usman like once.
But yeah, so in 2016, so he's had 3 knockouts. Or I guess he did knock out Cerrone, but again, it's not prime Cerrone. Like, look at who he's fighting. So, 2017, he wins by knockout.
Wasn't that... Oh, no.
Ellenberger, he beats by knockout. Then he beats Till and Askren. But these aren't guys at the peaks of their game. Right? And so we even then go further back to 2015... So, against a guy that I don't really know all that well, so we're not even really talking high-quality names here in the knockout department. And so when people were talking about, oh, he's going to knock him out, this, that, and the other thing, he hasn't had a high-quality knockout since Ben Askren in 2019. That was 3 years before.
It wasn't a fluke. It was really
great timing. You could argue that Ben knocked himself out on Jorge's knee.
Yeah.
But, like, the Diaz one, I don't think really counts. So, like, when you dig into the stats and who the knockouts are against, I think that kind of they want to paint this image of the fighter that isn't necessarily entirely accurate. I don't think Jorge Masvidal is quite the knockout artist that he's billed to be. Let me put it that way. That doesn't mean he's a fraud. It doesn't mean that he didn't have a good career. It doesn't mean that he wasn't an extremely marketable name who made a lot of big fights and was put in a lot of great places. But I don't think he's Hall of Fame worthy, in all honesty. But still, great ending for him to end it at home in Miami.
Right.
Like, no matter what, you want to see fighters being able to... And, like, he didn't get absolutely destroyed.
No.
Which, if you're going to go out, at least you're not going out on a gurney. Right?
You think that... You think if he got caught in submission, you think he just would have let himself go?
That's what I was thinking, right? My call was that if he got in a submission, which I thought he was going to get worked in round 2, because Burns had the 2 takedowns and was working for that choke, I thought that Masvidal would give up at that lotion and that claim from Burns. Now, I will say that Gilbert Burns does run his mouth, so if we're going to put a caveat, a little asterisk on anything, it's that Gilbert Burns is a big-time mouth runner.
Yep. So
that's, questionable. But if we go to the middleweight title bout, this was an amazing fight, right? So funny enough, the fight that we called as being the boring one on this card, the Rob Font Yanez fight, was awesome. The Burns Masvidal fight, if anything, was the letdown.
Yeah.
And we thought that was going to be a lot more explosive. But Pereira and Adesanya, that fight was an absolute masterclass in counterpunching from Israel Adesanya. Came out and won round 1, which I fully expected him to do because he came out hungry.
Yeah, there was something I don't remember what, but he didn't even come out. Did he not come out to walk out music? He just kind of walked out.
He did come out to walk out music, but there was no theatrics.
No, it was just,
Yeah, so lately he's been known for his basically WWE style walkouts, which again, if we're talking retirement homes, great place for Adesanya to be because he's a character. Right. He was coming out with this. Remember the Undertaker one against Cannonier, and then they basically did nothing the entire fight? Yeah, that was on my birthday. So you got the good birthday fight, and I got the shitty one. But
he comes on all those masks and shit.
Right, he usually goes full character. Right. This time he came out, just walked it out. Was very focused, and came in engaged. And that was the thing that if I were to make a criticism of his last fight, was that round 5, he was coasting. And that's where he got caught. At no point was he coasting in this fight. No. Granted, it didn't last very long. It was only 2 rounds. But in this fight, he came out. I will say that I do think that he just kind of got himself in a good position. I think Pereira was in a position where he could have worked for that end. There was time left in the round, and I think he hurt him with that leg kick.
Oh, you could tell.
Yeah, Adesanya sinking back into the fence was not wanting to put weight on that front leg.
Right.
That definitely, those leg kicks were snapping. They were hurting. The leg kick, he kind of crumpled back into the fence. But the one thing I will say, big difference, if we're going to parallel those 2 fights, right, the last 2 fights they've had, when Adesanya got put in that position the first time, he didn't put his hands up.
Right.
He didn't defend. And while he's going to say that was an early stoppage, I think we both disagreed with that. We both said that was a good stoppage. Because he really was not defending himself, and Pereira was teeing off. Or it could have gotten a lot nastier.
Or he didn't do anything to try to count. He didn't do anything to, what he did this time and countered.
This time he put a guard up. Pereira still was an absolute sniper. He nailed him with some really great body shots. And even that knee was a little glancing, but that definitely made contact with the head. Even if it was partially blocked, that knee to the head was great up and close. And then Adesanya kind of peekabooed through his hands, found a little bit of
he got inside.
A left jab, and then the right over. Just coming in, landing square on the temple of Pereira. And as you were saying, he got inside that punch. We were watching that breakdown, and it was crazy.
Well, Alex Pereira came up with that left hook that is just devastating. And then
that's his killer shot.
Yeah, and he tagged. Adesanya tagged he tagged him for he gave himself space with a nice jab.
Yep, that jab bought that space.
And then Alex Pereira came over. He was with the end shot, and then I think he just got over it.
Yeah, and he just managed to work his arm on the inside of that arm, and the inside of the hook, so that his hit
first.
His hit first. It absolutely square on the temple.
Because I remember watching that.
Massive.
I was like, it's over. Like, I thought that Pereira was going to put him out.
I honestly, like, he was working. He was hard. I thought he was in a position. I think there was... So, it finished late in the round. I think with Adesanya covering up.
Yeah, there was...
If he could do something... Like, even just to clinch.
seconds left.
Right? Even to tie him up or try and, like, shoot for a takedown, because we know Pereira's takedown defense is a little sketchy.
I think Pereira smelled blood in the water.
Yeah, and he definitely swarmed, but he let his guard down, and it's partial let his guard down, but also an absolute testament to Adesanya's counterpunching.
Yeah.
And that was a clinic. He kept his eyes on him. He kept focused. He wasn't, like, those shots were landing, but he wasn't in danger of being out. He wasn't rocked.
Yeah.
In headspace, body maybe, but headspace, and he was still mentally in that. So he may have, that definitely hurt his leg. He was definitely feeling it. But he kept his head in the game, and then absolutely ripped those two massive punches, and that was it. That was all she wrote.
I think what you said, too, is, like, keeping his eyes up on the target the whole time to make sure that he, like, never lost sight of Pereira. Never lost sight of what Pereira was going to throw. And then he just stayed calm. He didn't get... Like, he might have, like you said, he might have been rocked a little bit from the body shots, but he didn't lose his composure.
Right. I think that's the difference. Like, we talk about the damage that body shots can do. Body shots...
And he took a couple good ones.
Yeah, and, like, especially up close when he got that... Pereira got that right hand right in underneath the ribs. Yeah. That's a tough spot to hit. And for Adesanya, like, again, it comes down to fight IQ. As long as your head's clear...
Yeah.
For somebody who's that elite of a counterpuncher, I think that's honestly the difference there. So for him, I think Pereira may be a little too excited, a little too quick.
He was just trying to finish the job.
He was trying to finish the job and prove that he was absolutely dominant. Yeah. And I think all the judges had Adesanya winning round one, so I think it kind of came to that point. It was like, okay, I got to turn it up. I got to make sure that I get two, because he remembers what being down on the cards is like. If we look back just to their last fight, like, I think arguably Adesanya had all 4 rounds.
Yeah.
Maybe 1 round to Pereira.
But Adesanya does that, though. He's known for, like, hoping the tie will go to the runner, in a sense.
Yeah.
Like, hoping that if I just coast, they're not going to take a championship away from me from a decision.
Right.
I could do just enough. Like, John Jones did that a couple times.
Yeah, and honestly, I think that loss was probably the best thing for Adesanya's career, because, like we said, he came out no nonsense, and he dropped probably one of the biggest knockouts he's had.
Yeah, and people talked a lot of shit.
And he absolutely blacked out Pereira. Like, Pereira
was out sleep. He was sleeping.
Out. And
then he went after his son too.
Yeah, that was absolutely great. The celebrations were on point. So first, he hit him with the Archer celebration, which, if you haven't been following all the drama there, Pereira did a lot of, like, hunting Adesanya, like, just weird shit on Twitter. Like, just, I'm hunting you. I'm the Archer. I'm going to put you down. It's going to be the kill shot. And so Adesanya literally took 3 arrows out of the quiver. 1, 2, 3. In my mind, he said 3 losses to Pereira, right?
Yep.
That's literally putting those demons to bed.
Yep.
So sinking those losses right back. Those 3 arrows that have been in him, taking them out of his back and putting them straight into Pereira's chest.
Yep.
I think that was, like, incredibly symbolic, and definitely something that he's been reflecting a lot on. And if we were to quote, The Last Dance and that meme, he took that shit personally.
Yeah.
But then even that celebration that you talked about, so when he was knocked out in the kickboxing competition by Pereira the first time.
Yeah, his son was...
Pereira's son got up onto the ring and then just, like, flopped like a fish, like Adesanya got KO'd, like, making fun of him. After the fight, after the 3 arrows, Adesanya turns and points into the crowd. And the cameras didn't pan to where he's pointing, but it was at Pereira's son, and then he did the flop like a fish thing. Like, oh my god, dude, that's
the levels of petty. Like, get out of the way.
That is absolute levels.
And
of
he
petty.
Said he was like, I'm petty,
but
then after the fight, they talked backstage, and there was like nothing. Like,
pure
I think Adesanya like apologized. Like, he was like, hey, like
that might be going too far, but that was pure expression of, like, I finally got over this, and this has been.
I think Pereira understood. He didn't take it to, like,
no, and, like, that, I think for them, we've talked about this, like, the respect that fighters have. They've been fighting each other for a long time.
Yeah,
they have
true
history,
rivalry,
and honestly, their conversation backstage, in my mind, that's the beautiful thing about the fight game, right? Like, these guys have every reason to be shitting on each other, and instead it's just pure, like, I think Pereira is honestly, like, kicking himself because he had that chance there. And to see them that evenly matched, I think that's great. I don't think we go straight and run it back.
They'll fight again, definitely.
They will fight again. I think Pereira needs to round himself out a little because he is still very just kickboxing heavy. So Adesanya is a good matchup for him because Adesanya will indulge the kickboxing. Right. So I think that is great. I think I would love to see him. I know we talked about it earlier, but I'd love to see him against Whitaker. I think that would be a solid fight. And then
Burns.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think like Gilbert Burns is welterweight, but yeah. With Pereira, just like give him someone who's a grappler. So if we look at the rankings here, we have gotta go down a little bit. Sorry, we have Adesanya. You got Whitaker. You got Vettori. Honestly, Vettori would be a good fight too because that's a guy who's willing to stand and fight. Vettori would be a solid fight. Triscus Duplessis, I think, would be a good one. There's no reason for him to fight Strickland again. But Duplessis, again, I think Duplessis needs a top 5 win. I wouldn't hate seeing Triscus Duplessis and Marvin Vettori fighting. I don't really see, other than like Robert Whitaker, I don't really see too many great grapplers in middleweight. So I think now, if anything, is the time to capitalize on that striking. I mean, Vettori's a good grappler in his own right. But is a little willing to stand on his feet and be dumb. But that guy's an absolute orc. That guy takes shots like you wouldn't believe. So I think that would be a war. I wouldn't hate seeing that fight. Either Whitaker or Vettori would be great. If you want to put, I think Duplessis needs one more win. I
know they called out Duplessis and Adesanya have been active.
Let them call out all you want. I would honestly like. The 3 fights we highlighted earlier, I would rather have any of those over Triscus Duplessis. Right. I don't think he's the guy. Like, I think he's a fun fighter, but he hasn't really, if we look at his fight record, right? Who was his last fight? Derek Brunson? No, that fight got, canceled?
Yeah, I think so.
So his last win was beating Till?
Yeah.
And putting Till, and then before that, Tavares, who's not even, Giles.
He's really fought anybody.
Perez. He doesn't have the names.
Yeah.
I think he needs one name before he can honestly make that shot at the title. So I think I wouldn't hate seeing any combination of let Duplessis fight
anyone,
Whitaker or Vettori. I think Paulo Costa, Jared Cannonier, both of them. Paulo Costa's coming.
Who did Marvin Vettori fight last?
Marvin Vettori just beat. I know. Was it Jared Cannonier? No, it was Roman Dolidze. Yeah, Roman Dolidze. That actually wouldn't be a bad fight either. I'm shocked that they've got Duplessis up higher than Dolidze.
I didn't think that Marvin. I wasn't impressed with Marvin Vettori in the league. I remember talking about it.
Yeah, I mean, he won on leg kicks, which was just kind of rare. But he's showing development to his striking. He racked up points. He racked up points with just volume of strikes. Right. So I don't, but this is a guy who's willing to stand and fight and is an absolute warrior. I wouldn't hate seeing him go toe-to-toe with Pereira. I wouldn't hate seeing Whitaker, who's more of that grappler, go after Pereira because I think that really tests Pereira.
It'll be interesting to see what Uncle Dana does.
Yeah, I think that's great, but I think the next title fight, I don't think it goes to anyone in the division. If I'm being entirely honest, that's just Adesanya's cleaned out the division.
Yeah.
The only person he hasn't fought is Duplessis, but Duplessis has no names to jump Robert Whitaker. I'm sorry, you can't jump Whitaker. Yeah. You can't.
Yeah. But maybe the way they look at it is Whitaker's already, hasn't Whitaker lost twice to Adesanya already?
Yeah. So Whitaker's 0-2 against Adesanya.
In not even great fashion.
Nope. So that's what's tough though, is Adesanya really has cleaned out the division. What are you really going to do for middleweight? Yeah. There isn't really much on here. So Adesanya has beaten just beat Pereira, obviously. Yeah. He's beaten Robert Whitaker.
It would make sense for, I think Usman, you remember, Usman's getting older. I'm sure the weight cut doesn't help.
Yep.
To move up.
Right. So I think that is a great fight, and just for the storyline alone, right? Imagine that promo where they just talk about Africa and then make fun of Triscus Duplessis again. That'd be fucking hilarious. The real Africa. Just that gives even more fuel to that fire, which would be funny. But jumping over to our next event, because we do, again, there's no layoff. We're right into an event. This one's UFC Fight Night. This is going to be, in we were just talking about it earlier before we started recording, the Holloway and Arnold Allen card. This is a very top-heavy card.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of names on here, but even so, it wouldn't be the standing guillotine if we didn't give you a couple of fights to watch for. So if we're going to highlight some fights, the early prelims, or I guess there's no early prelims, the earlier, it's not officially early, but I would say these first 3 fights are an absolute snooze fest of who's who. Right? I don't know any of these names. I don't particularly care. There's nothing at stake.
Right.
So if we look, speaking of things being at stake, if we look at lightweight, we have Daniel Zellhuber and Lando Venata. Lando Venata, a little more experienced fighter. He's coming in with literally, he's a coin flip. All of his fights is like win-loss, 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 win-loss. So this is a guy who's just the consummate journeyman. But so the focus is going to be here on Zellhuber. He's 12-1. Got the nickname Golden Boy, which is bold. But again, another young up-and-coming fighter coming out of the Dana White Contender Series, lost his debut. So we just talked about that with Rosas. How does he bounce back? For Zellhuber, this is the same deal. How does he bounce back here? Losing against Ogden, who we just saw in the last card, but in a catchweight bout, so I don't really consider those real.
Right.
But if we look at this, he's 12-1, that one loss, so he's coming off of losing that perfect record. If we're that narrative of how do these prospects bounce back, This is that bounce back fight against a guy who's a 50-50 fighter. One thing I will say, difference between him and Rosas. Zellhuber's more on his feet. So out of 12 wins, he's won 7 by knockout. So if we criticized the not being able to finish of Rosas, right, the maybe needing a little more on his feet. So we have 7 out of his 12 wins, 9 have been finishes. Pretty good ratio there. 7 knockouts, 2 wins by submission. So this guy seems to be a little bit more striker, but that gives us, I think, that opportunity for he can punch back. And looking at Lando here, which unfortunately is not Lando Calrissian, but that's a great name. This is a guy who is balanced. He's 4 wins by knockout, 5 wins by submission with 8 first-round finishes. So expect him to come out heavy, trying to... Yeah. So expect this one to get off to a strong start, and then look for that to try and stay more on its feet. And then when Venata gets in trouble, he may be going for the ground game and really bring in Zellhuber into deep water there. Try and force him to do something. So I think that one, again, if we're hyping these young prospects, this is a chance for them to show that they've got some skill there. And looking again, you know that I love these big guy fights. One that I'm disappointed in that we didn't see was the big guys got canceled. Yeah. There were no heavyweight fights. There was even a makeup, right?
Another good slobber knocker.
Right. We need these guys swanging and banging. Otherwise, what are we doing here? So we've got Zach Cummings, Ed Herman. Ed Herman is coming down from heavyweight. He just lost a heavyweight. He's coming down to light heavy. So, he's going down to... Oh, no, I'm sorry. Zach Cummings is coming up. My apologies. 185 to 205.
Yeah.
So light heavy is, we said earlier, 205. The middleweight is 185. So we have Zach Cummings coming up, testing that punching power of Ed Herman. We'll see what happens here. Herman's coming off the loss. Cummings coming off the win. We'll see who's able to get the better of one another. These are two guys that just want to stand and fight. So if you're going to watch any of those prelims, those two that I've called out are solid. But then also this one we were talking about earlier, this is weird that this is down here.
Yeah, the flyweight.
But in the flyweight bout, we have the number 4 and number 5 guys in flyweight.
Yeah.
So we have Brandon Royval and Mateus Nicolau. If we look at their records, maybe like Royval's record is kind of misleading. It's 14-6, but his 2 losses that he's had in the UFC, one's against Moreno, the current champion, and then one's against why am I forgetting his name now? But the guy who's going to be challenging Moreno for the belt next. So he's really gone against
Figueiredo.
No, not Figueiredo, because that was just the one they finished. Let's see. It was versus Pantoja. So he lost against Pantoja. He lost against Moreno, and then he's on a 2-fight winning streak since. And this against Nicolau, who's also looking like a solid fighter. So we've got 2 guys here at the top of the division kind of feeling out maybe who's got that next title shot.
Yeah.
So absolutely shocking to me that this not only isn't even the featured prelim, but on a card that we've deemed as being very weak, this fight not even getting top billing is insane to me that this is a prelim. So you're going to get a high-quality fight here, no matter what,
high-quality
out of
guys.
a prelim. Yeah, you've got guys that have some names in the division at least.
Wait, he beat Kape?
Yeah, so he's beaten Manel Kape. He's like his last loss is coming in 2018, right? So this is a guy who's on the up and up. We got a 4 and a 5, probably setting up our next title contender.
Yeah.
And the fact that this is a prelim, not even a featured prelim, on a card where I don't even understand what the thinking rationale here is, but this to me should be the co-main event of the evening.
Right.
And it just isn't. Weird that that's in the prelim, but you definitely don't want to miss that one that you should have circled, starred, whatever system you use, highlighted in multicolored highlighters, whatever you want to do, that one's got to be on your radar. Moving up into the main card, again, not really a ton that's great. You've got Pedro Munoz, who, this was the eye poke, right? Yeah, the one that was, his last fight was against O'Malley. That was declared a no contest because of the eye poke.
Yeah, but O'Malley was piecing him up.
Yeah, and he's going against Chris Gutierrez. That one could be a solid fight. Gutierrez is 9 wins by knockout in his 19, so this could be a really good opportunity as well to see that one. I don't really know what we're going to get out of Munoz because he wasn't doing great against a striker, but this is a number 9 versus a number 13, so at least a half-decent matchup. Like, I'm not mad at that. But the one that I would really focus on is Tanner Boser and at light heavyweight. So looking at this, so Tanner the Bulldozer Boser. With that name, you know this is a guy who wants to stand there and just beat on people. So he's 20 wins, 9 losses, and 1 draw. He's coming down to light heavyweight. This was the one I mixed up. He's coming down from the heavyweight division to light heavyweight I'm sorry, but ION is not Jan, maybe?
Maybe.
Kutalaba. Don't know this guy too well, but this is a guy 16-9-1 with 12 knockouts. These two have zero interest in going to the ground unless they've got their ass knocked out, and that's when they're hitting the ground. So that one, again, we got robbed of this last week, so this is definitely one where if you've been jonesing, we still got plenty of knockouts.
Right.
But big guy knockouts just hit different.
They do.
They really do. So if you're looking for some big guy knockouts, Tanner Boser.
Figuratively and literally.
Yeah, they literally shake the whole arena when they go down. Moving up the card, I mean, obviously the huge fight here, and we got to touch on this, is featherweight. Max Holloway, Arnold Allen. Whoever wins here, realistically, gets that shot again. But can you, the worst thing that could happen here for the UFC is Max Holloway winning again, right? Because Holloway versus Volkanovski, while they have been, Holloway's a great fighter. They're not going to take anything away from Holloway, but Volkanovski just made him look silly.
He's already fought 3 times.
Yeah. He's lost 3 times to Volkanovski. But again, this division has been defined by Holloway and Volkanovski for so long but again, the reason why is because no one else can beat Max.
Yep.
Max is the number 1 guy, if not for Holloway. So what do you really do there?
Who is the number 1 contender?
So the number 1 contender at the moment is... who's fighting Volkanovski? I should know this off the top of my head, but I really don't. It's not Rodriguez, is it? Let's see. The next fight... Is it going to show us who the next fight is? It's not going to show us who the next fight is.
Where's the goal looking, though?
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, yeah. I got the rankings pulled up. Silly. All right. So let's look at Yaya Rodriguez. He's the interim champ. So it was Rodriguez. I was right. It was Rodriguez.
Yeah.
And I just closed the ranking, so hopefully we don't need that again. But with Yaya Rodriguez getting Volkanovski next, literally the worst thing that could happen for the UFC, for this division, is Holloway wins and Volkanovski wins, because then what the hell do you do? Volkanovski, I think at that point, goes up permanently.
Yeah.
I think it, or Holloway, there's no way Holloway's going to retire on a win.
Volkanovski could take the belt again and then just say, okay, I'll let the peasants fight over it.
Yeah.
That would be best case scenario for Holloway.
Right. I mean, I think Holloway's the champ without Volkanovski. It's insane to me that these two have literally defined, like, as clear-cut a number one and number two as there are in any of our divisions. Volkanovski definitely number one, but no one has been able to put Holloway away. Like, he's 23-7-0, but 3 of those losses are to the same guy. Like, he just cannot shake him. Now, 4th time's the charm, maybe, but I don't think you really cut that promo. It's not a great one.
Yeah.
I mean, he even beat the interim champ, Rodriguez.
Right.
So, like, it's not even like, right, yeah, Rodriguez is the interim on a technicality.
Holloway's losses are, like, pretty decent losses, too.
Yeah, so Volkanovski. Yeah. Let's keep going down. He lost against Poirier.
Yep, and then did he lose to McGregor?
Let's see. He lost to Poirier. We're going way back now at this point, looking for another loss here. We're going way back.
He beat Oliveira.
Yeah, he beat Oliveira. He beat Cub Swanson in prime Cub Swanson era. We're going way back here. We're talking. He did lose to McGregor back in 2013. That's a good memory because I can't remember that far back. That would be the concussions. He lost to Bermudez. And
that's it.
Now there's got to be one more because it's 4 and then those 2, right? Oh no, and then I forgot Poirier again. So so lost to Poirier.
I mean, he lost to Poirier, McGregor, and
some guy named Bermudez, and then 4 times to. That's weird because it says he's got 2 losses to Poirier, and is it he lost 4 times to Holloway? 3. Oh, he lost 3 times to Volkanovski. Yeah, because 4th time would be the charm. So 3 times to Volkanovski, 2 times to Poirier, 1 time to McGregor, and then that guy Bermudez. Which, hey, that's
it's good for him.
Yeah, if you want to do some UFC trivia, that's a fucking name to throw in there, right? Who are Max Holloway's losses to? I think that's a stumper, right? But great fighter. The best thing that could happen. He is getting old. So I will say, like, the best thing that could happen for this situation, for the UFC, right, for matchmaking purposes, would be Arnold Allen winning. So Arnold Allen is 19-1. He's looked great. I mean, he's absolutely demolished Dan Hooker, which is a great name to have because... Hooker, obviously. But just because the Hangman's is a dangerous knockout specialist. Yep. So to beat him by KO is a pretty big deal. Calvin Kattar. I don't know who Yusuf is. But, like...
Who's he lost to?
Yeah, I'm curious. I wonder if the loss came in UFC or not. We're going way down. Yeah, the loss was not in the UFC. So he is not lost in the UFC. And this is a guy who's put in the work to climb up here.
Yeah.
Because we're looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 fights since 2015.
10-0 in the UFC.
10-0 in the UFC. Getting a chance to fight a legend. Now, if we're talking about guys who belong in the Hall of Fame, Max Holloway belongs in the Hall of Fame. This guy is an absolute testament to the division.
How old is Max Holloway?
He's got to be getting up there. Let's see. Because weirdly enough, the fighter pages on UFC don't show.
Could this be a...
Max Holloway age. This could be a retirement home situation, right? Where if he loses, he doesn't really have a clean shot at the belt, and if Volkanovski doesn't go anywhere, he's only 31, but
he's been around forever.
He's been around for forever. He's been around a long time. That's a very
McGregor's 34.
Yeah, he's younger than McGregor, but that's a lot of mileage.
Yeah,
it's a lot of mileage. He's had a lot of wars. He's a great fighter, and he's still a great fighter.
And you know what's crazy? I wonder if that's the thing that maybe Holloway goes up because...
Can he, though? I mean, he's so skinny.
Yeah, but is he cutting?
I don't know that he has to. I think he literally is just that's who he is. I mean, he's 5'11", so you would think that his frame could support the bigger size. I mean, he's got a 3-inch height advantage over Arnold Allen.
He's pretty tall for a small guy.
But weirdly enough, his reach isn't that long. He's mostly legs.
Yeah.
But if he goes up though, who's he really fighting? Like does he have a chance against not Makhachev, Islam? Because that's the lightweight guy. So like, if he moves up,
well, he would have to move up.
It's tough. Like there's no easy route for anyone in that division
move up
from featherweight to move up. So if he moves featherweight to lightweight,
oh yeah,
you've got
he's fought. A lot of these guys have moved. A lot of these guys have moved up.
Correct.
All of them.
If he were to lose, would you see an opportunity at the Dustin Poirier again? Could we make it a trilogy? Would you want to? He's already lost both. But again, just throwing things out there. This is already a complicated.
That's what Poirier did. Poirier moved up and he was better.
Yeah. I mean, Holloway could move up.
Well, I think people like Poirier, though, I think they were weight cutting. Like McGregor had to kill himself to get to.
Because I mean, that was the division that had the names at that time, though.
Oh yeah, it was an election.
Jose Aldo, right? So if you go back to that, or Jose, not Jose. Sorry, I always mess that up. But if we go back, if we look at lightweight, they're just really
Eddie Alvarez.
It's tough. No matter what he does, it's a tough spot to be in. So if he were to lose, I wouldn't be shocked by a retirement. Yeah. If he were to win, that's kind of a worst case scenario.
He could move up.
Do you really want? He could move up, but it's hard. It's really hard.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Look at how Volkanovski handled Holloway with ease.
Yeah.
And then he went and fought Makhachev, and while that was a great fight, he didn't really control it.
Right.
If you're telling me that the absolute stud that is Alexander Volkanovski can't handle Islam Makhachev, do you think Max Holloway?
Not many people can handle Islam Makhachev.
Right, and so
Makhachev himself could probably move up.
Right, Makhachev could probably fight middleweight at this point. That dude's an absolute monster.
Oh yeah,
imagine Makhachev. But if we
Alex
look at
Pereira's a monster. Alex Pereira
heavyweights legitimately should be could be light heavyweight. I could see that as a move for him too. If we were to imagine swapping Jan Blachowicz,
he would own that division.
Imagine Jan Blachowicz comes down to middleweight and Alex Pereira moves up.
I think Pereira would.
That'd be great.
Light heavyweight, because
you could put him in immediately against Yuri Prochazka or Magomed Ankalaev.
The light heavyweight division doesn't
I mean, my boy Johnny Walker's here, though, dude. I love Johnny Walker.
Back in the day, light heavyweight was
It was the division that was UFC. Yeah. I mean, you had... why am I blanking on this? Forrest Griffin, right?
Forrest Griffin, Rampage Jackson. Yeah. You had...
Forrest Griffin made me watch UFC.
Yeah. Fucking Tito Ortiz.
Yeah.
Fucking...
Chuck
Liddell. Yeah. The Iceman.
So,
he just
that's a guy that's got some problems.
He got some demons. He was at the Adesanya party. It was so funny. I saw a video of the Adesanya after party.
Yeah.
And him and Tito were buddy with each other.
And then
which
30 seconds
ruined
later,
my childhood because
you can't have
they
that.
hated each other.
You can't be friends with the Huntington Beach bad boy, dude. You can't allow it. All right, well, that takes us to the end of our preview for Holloway versus Allen and our summary here of UFC 287. I do think next week's card is a little bit weak, but I think if you focus in on those fights and then you do a lot of drinking in the other fights, it's going to be a great night. So that's it for us. Thank you so much for listening. We will be going live at some point with those YouTube podcasts, so be on the lookout for that. Again, that'll be... we'll tweet that link out onto the Twitter page. Again, that's at TSGMMA Podcast. You can catch us there, and we will see you next time.
Peace.